Welcome, you're listening to Rethinking Climate. We investigate how we speak about the climate crisis. So today we're here with a scientist and also the ideator of an app, which could be a new revolutionary way to talk about the climate crisis. So welcome, Eleonora Cogo, and thank you for your time today.
Nice to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
So, Eleonora, you are a senior scientific manager at the Europe Mediterranean Center on Climate Change, and you're responsible for the creation of the video game Change Game, which is a game-based learning application in which players explore the complexity of the climate system and its interaction with society and natural ecosystems. So you manage a lot and read a lot and draft a lot of policy-based documents. So can you tell me about the challenges and what limitations may become in your experience with these kind of documents?
Yes. So basically, a lot of my of my work lays in between, what the scientific community says and how kind of policymakers are supposed to kind of take into account this kind of information. I think in general, when we talk about climate change, there is a really good process in place and is represented by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is kind of a bit of a unique body in the scientific world, in a sense that has been instituted upon kind of a governmental decision. It's an intergovernmental panel, but effectively is actually made of the work of hundreds of scientists around the world, which assess the kind of what the scientific literature say, and then they kind of compile this information and say whether there's consensus, less consensus, and highlight what are the priorities. And I think in that sense, I think working in the climate sphere, that's a very extremely sound source of work to take inspiration. There is it's already kind of done for policymaking in a way, because that work really kind of represents the best of science and the consensus. So in that sense, I would say compared to other kind of topics, it's a very good starting point. From a more kind of policy perspective, I think the challenge is always, especially dealing with a problem like climate change and the climate crisis. We know that we have we have to undertake an enormous transformation of the way we kind of live, operate our societies, and so on. But we have to fit it within an existing world and existing limitation in terms of political will, budget allocation, and so on, which also people acceptance of this kind of changes. So and they're big changes, so they're not kind of easy to translate in immediate action and so on, but on the other hand are extremely necessary. So it's a difficult but fun space to navigate.
So there's an experts who've declared that the reason why solutions are not applied as speeded as required, it's because communication of sustainability is sort of failing. There is an absence there or not well done between different stakeholders. And how do you think first of all that that's true? And how do you foresee maybe improving that within in particular the scientific world, versus talking to policymakers or even a general audience?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think personally, I've been kind of working in this space for a few years now, and I have definitely noticed in recent years, I think, a huge improvement in terms of both the way things are communicated, but especially how widespread they're getting. I think there have been several events which I think have contributed to really kind of moving on the messages beyond the usual suspects, so scientists and policymaker. First and foremost, the Paris Agreement. I think that has really been a landmark a really definitive point where, from there on, there was a clear vision of where we need to be. And I think that has contributed a lot in terms of changing the discourse, more attention, more people also trying to improve that kind of messages. And I think the other kind of major, I would say, events has been the kind of the growth of all this kind of youth movement, which have really kind of also helped raising the ambition, because I think they have really been able to kind of change the discourse in terms of you are defining our future. And I think there has been a very strong political message, perhaps a lot more than a lot of the kind of scientific warning, right? I mean, the essence is the same, but, one thing is a scientist saying, another thing is saying, okay, I'm, your child, your grandchild, you're talking about my future and so on. I think it kind of connects with people at a very much more deeper emotional level. And so I would say a lot of these things actually complement each other. Obviously all the kind of climate activists, the movement are taking the scientific messages, the communication, people working in the communication space and so on. In terms of room for improvement, I think if I, for example, looking at my experience from, looking at the IPCC reports, I think they used to be extremely difficult to read documents.
Yes,
but I think there has been an attempt to try to make them more easier to digest. I think, they are still, let's say, a little Bible of climate. So, they should remain kind of comprehensive and precise in their messages. But then, we've seen a lot of organizations taking the main messages, creating visual representation, videos, and, a lot of really nice, a lot of nice work done in that space. I think, a lot more can be done, but I think that's been an interesting kind of evolution. And I think perhaps where more can be done in terms of making the content a bit more accessible also for like a non-expert audience, and really translate it into, okay, what does it mean for me or for the place where I live.
What advice would you give to someone who's not exactly interested in reading these kind of documents, even the simplified version of it, and maybe however they still feel they would like to know more about it? Is there an advice you would like to give them?
Well, I think there is, I think it's an important topic, it's because it really relates and defines the future that each single one of us is going to live into. So I think that should be already a reason to be interested, right? I don't think that everybody has to be a super expert in all the climate sciences. I mean, when I talk about climate science, it's actually an extremely vast amount of data, information, and disciplines, right? Because we are looking at from the more kind of physical science, or how our Earth climate system works, has evolved in the past, and how will evolve in the future, depending on different, emission scenarios. But then it also looks down at what are the impacts and consequences of this warming and how do they then reflect in different sectors, in the way we produce food, in the way we produce energy, and so on. And then there is the whole kind of sets of disciplines that look at, okay, what can we do then? So looking more into the policy, economic side of things. So I think perhaps, there may be some of these areas that people relate more to, but I think in general, a broad general understanding, it's a really kind of a must-have for the 21st century, because, it's really, we're already kind of witnessing significant changes, and they're going to be more, not less, because unfortunately, we've already drawn a pattern for the next 20, 30 years that depends on historical emissions. So
the video game that you created, we can say, so what's the ideology? Can you tell me how you came with the idea as well?
Yeah, so basically the idea of creating this game was also a bit of a desire from our side to kind of trying to explain what scientists do, and how we study our planet and how, how we interact on our planet, and, this kind of strategy to decarbonize and so on, but put it in a, in a less static form, but in a more kind of interactive way to really allow people to play and see what happened if, and so it really kind of came from a desire to actually communicate and help to understand better how complex the problem is, but also how important the choices we make are. And so basically we have created this game. It was a process through which we kind of involved both, climate scientists. We had game developers. We had people coming from the education world. We actually had gamers, and all together kind of developed the concept. And effectively, the game is based a little bit on a city building game, but unlike kind of traditional city building games, there is a strong climate component. So effectively, every kind of action you do, as you build your city, you procure food, you build houses, you find sources of energy, and so on, has actually either an emission or a reduction of emissions. And as the city evolves, becomes more industrialized and so on, obviously emissions rise and so on. And then basically, the higher the emissions, the temperature of this planet rises, and that determines more frequent and intense kind of disastrous events, which then kind of slow down the progress of the city, and can actually cause some serious problem. The particularity of this game is that actually that is played, or it can be played in a multiplayer form, which means that effectively several players can play together on the same planet. Each one is responsible for his own city, but then the temperature of the planet is given by the sum of the emissions of all the players on the same planet, which is a bit, as in the real world, right? There's nobody that alone can say, okay, I'm going to be able to get the global emissions to net zero. Not because it's an effort where everybody has to play a part. Otherwise, it's an impossible goal to achieve. And yes, and then in the game, there is a lot of opportunities to actually then, move down to kind of decarbonization pathways, increase resilience to climate change impacts. People can invest through new technologies, some, very present, some a bit more kind of futuristic. They can work through education, kind of trying to change the behavior of the population, being more energy efficient or change diets. There is a lot of different strategies that a player can apply. And the idea is that there is not just one path. There are many paths that can be undertaken, and it's a kind of hopefully a fun game to really play, experiment, also fail and learn. Why it didn't work out. What can I do better next time? And in this way, hopefully help people really to understand. How complex it is also to tackle as an issue.
Yes, indeed. I really liked two elements of this game, which, like you said, the fact that we're all involved, and it was because there's a lot the discussion about geoengineering, but however, that's a whole different episode, I guess, to look at. But the sort of idea that technology can help us, but people forget that if I apply technology in one country or continent, the others should also abide to sort of the rules to help. Otherwise, we're not going to achieve the solutions. So I really like that multiplayer option. And education. In a previous episode, we talked about climate anxiety and the pressure individuals, at least now talking about citizens, not necessarily other people, which I would still imagine that maybe some policymakers could feel that pressure to actually do something to help the planet. So I find that a game, it's a really good form of communication because you learn without feeling pressured necessarily. So really, really great job. And do you have personal expectations? What would you like this game to either become, maybe a different version of it, or even the use that the people can make of different ages, of course?
Well, in terms of what we have done, this game was developed, through the support of Climate Kick. They gave us a grant to develop the game and also to kind of engage with we were able to kind of engage with schools and different kind of educational events. We also went to kind of a game fair and so on. So we had a kind of an initial, let's say initially we really thought and planned it for schools, really to be kind of a game that could be played in a classroom, you know, one class, one planet, and play on it. But actually we have, you know, received also a lot of interest from, you know, non-school environments, a lot of obviously people interested on the topic. And I mean, it's really been the kind of first, it's a kind of, let's say, an evolved prototype in a sense. We had to make a lot of choices in terms of also a little bit of, in terms of simplifying a little bit, because there's so many components that could be represented. You know, we had to make a selection to try to make it representative. But so, you know, I think it'd be nice in the future, you know, to perhaps include other components to, you know, for example, one thing we haven't really represented directly, it's calculated indirectly, but like the whole transportation system, you could integrate a whole kind of waste management, you know, link it more to consumption and so on. I think another thing that may be quite interesting, because in the game you start from zero, right? So there's nothing in your city, on your planet. But it may be also fun to actually bring people to more kind of current scenarios and say, okay, here we are, how would you kind of go from here? And so I think the possibilities are really infinite. Let's see, I think it's still time to kind of collect feedback, let people play, and hopefully spread news, and also be very happy to kind of receive feedback for people that have played, if they see any kind of way that we could kind of improve it or make it more interesting. You know, very, very happy to collect this kind of suggestions.
Great. And I'll make a joke. It'd be very nice if at some negotiations, policymakers were sort of leaders were forced to play this game. You're like, what would you do? Let's see your decisions you would make in a game app. So it would be very nice to see sort of the fun aspect and apply it to someone who actually has to make the decisions. But so do you have any further comments you would like to leave to our listeners?
I mean, no, I mean, I think it's been kind of nice to talk a little bit about my work, about the game, and yeah, so I'll just kind of make an invitation for people to play Change Game, and let us know how you get on. If you manage to actually win the game, that's always fun to see.
Have you seen a different approach based on age to the app, and what kind, and yeah, how was it?
Yeah, well, we kind of developed kind of keeping in mind sort of like teenagers, kind of young adults, you know, in a sense that not so much because of the game, because I think the game can also be played by, you know, primary school kids and so on, but more in terms of what it kind of represents. And, you know, this notions of systemic transformation of the way society works, you know, changing that. I think those were kind of topics, not so that we're kind of more adapted to, you know, kind of a bit of an older target audience, but, you know, we also had a lot of kind of adults playing it, and, you know, and I think everybody can find something out of the game that they can relate more to. But the game in itself can be really played by anybody, because it doesn't really require any kind of prerequisite or, you know, knowledge about climate change. But obviously, the more you know, the more you are, probably the more you get out of it in terms of fun and information and learning.
I'm Paola Valandro. I was part of EIT Climate Kick, which is a European community of knowledge and innovation related to climate change. And in this role as an education lead for Italy, I have supported Eleonora and her team to develop this project, but of course I was involved in many other projects with, especially with the Italian partners of the Climate Kick. I had the opportunity to collaborate with Eleonora and CMCC with this project. It was really great experiences, because we have discussed from the very beginning together. Together with, of course, I was there because I was a member of Climate Kick, which funded this project, and so funded the development and the ideation and the first development of the game. So I was part of this large team, and we worked together in the ideation, lots of discussion. I had also the opportunity to take part in the first phase, in the ideation phase. We had a fantastic meeting workshop with, and Eleonora mentioned the involvement of different kind of people working with education, game player, institutions, scientists, and of course game developer, video game developer. So it was a great experience for me, and I'm very happy that this product, this game can move forward, can further develop, and I hope that that there will be a lot of people using it.
You will find the link to the game again for Apple and Android down in the description, to the websites, and you can find Rethinking Climate on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So thank you very much, Paola and Eleonora, for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Pleasure. Bye.